Hi everyone. So, as promised, I'm going to make a video on the circular flow of income, the parts that we didn't really have a chance to discuss in class. So, you can see this before you answer questions about the circular flow. On the screen right now, I have shown Test Your Understanding 1.9 from the textbook. This is for the PPC, which you had done in class. Now, this exercise, although I didn't give a worksheet for it, but do make sure to kind of practice these questions as well, because when I take like a test on it, you can expect me to maybe like use some of these questions. So it'll be good for you to, do these questions and then ask me if you have any doubts in them. Okay, so coming to the circular flow model, um, now there are two things which we're going to see. We're going to look at the circular flow model in a closed economy, and we're going to look at it in an open economy. Now, what is the meaning of a closed economy and an open economy? So, closed is when we're saying it is not, its borders are closed, right? So, it's closed to international trade. Okay, that's the meaning of closed. And also, there is no government, they're just markets meaning there's just the resource market and the product market, the households and the firms, and there's no government, there is no international trade, and there are even no financial institutions or banks. Okay, that's what we mean by closed. So that's the model that you already know that we had discussed. If you can see here, this is the circular flow. Here you have the households on one end, you have the firms on another, and they trade with each other in resource and product markets. So we did an outer circle and we did an inner circle. So this outer flow is the flow of resources going from households to firms, where the firms have purchased these resources in the resource markets. The households have sold their resources, and the firms use those cell factors of production, CELL, and make goods and services, and they sell them in turn in the product markets where the households purchase them. Okay, so that's how the resources and the products and services are flowing. And then we come to what do they get in return. So in return for the resources which they give, which households give, they earn income, rent, wages, interest, and profit. So that's income for households, but at the same time, that's cost of production for the firms, right? So the firms, they are spending something to make goods and services, and then that's why they need to pay that cost because they're buying the land, labor, and capital, and as a result, they're able to make these goods and services because they have paid those costs of production. If they don't pay, they won't get land, labor, capital, or entrepreneurship. Okay, so, cost of production is a household income. In return, households with that money they spend, and this household expenditure is like very important to the economy. This is extremely vital. And then product markets, the selling that the firms do in the product markets, they receive sales revenue from that, and that sales revenue is what the firms then use to buy the factors of production in terms. So it's a circular flow that's happening. So the inner circle is like you can see a circular flow of the money. Okay, and then the outer flow is the flow of factors of production and goods and services. This outer one is clockwise, the inner one is anti clockwise. And this is all about the closed economy. But we know economies aren't closed, and there are things like banks, financial institutions, there is the government, and there are foreign countries with which the economies are trading. So we would add something called as leakages and injections. So this little diagram here is just showing you that if there's a flow of water, there can be some injections into that, and there can be some leakages as well, right, as the water is flowing through the pipe. In the same way, in the economy, there are certain leakages and injections. The best way is through the diagram. Like I said, get comfortable with diagrams, draw them. They are your best friend in econ. If you understand diagrams, you can explain anything. You can use them to analyze anything, and you can even use them to evaluate. So they're a really good tool. They're not only useful for explaining your point, but they're also useful for analysis. Okay, so like we did this one, so we've already done this part, that the firms, they give factor incomes or cost of production to the households, and the households in return use that to spend for goods and services. There's like a shortened version of it. Now these are the three, we can say, economic agents that we do not consider in the closed economy, that we can see right now in the open economy. There are financial markets, there's the government, and there are foreign countries, right? So, what do we mean by financial markets? We can talk about banks or financial institutions as financial markets. What they do is that they encourage households to save. Okay, so households can do two things with the incomes that they receive. They can basically either save it or they can spend it. If they spend it, that's going to the firms, right? Because they're spending on goods and services. But if they save it, then they're putting their money in the banks. Okay. Now, why that saving is essential for running an economy is that it is through those savings that households are putting in banks that there is investment in the economy. Now, what do we mean by that? So basically, let's say a firm wants to start a business, right? An entrepreneur wants to start a business. So he needs to take a loans from the bank, okay? And the loans that he takes, it's actually the savings that the bank keeps of households, right? And that money is then loaned out and is used for investing. So firms basically will then use that money for investing, and it will be an injection into the economy, because that investment means the money is going into the circular flow. However, a saving means the money is coming out of the circular flow. If you look at this, once again, the households can either save or they can spend, right? If they're spending, it's going into the economy, right? Because it is generating demand in terms of demanding goods and services. If they're saving, they're not really spending it, but that saving is therefore a leakage, but that money is being used for investment, so that is an injection. Okay. Next, the government is another agent. Now, governments, to provide any kinds of services, to provide things like defense, for instance, or maybe they want to provide railway services or hospitals or schools or whatever, they need money which they collect taxes for. Okay, so households have to pay those taxes to the government, and then the government in turn will spend money in the economy, and like they would spend that money for probably like a hospital or school, like we just said. Okay, so that spending by the government is actually an injection because it's going into the economy, whereas those taxes are a leakage because it's not really directly going into the economy. If there is something which is directly stimulating the economy, it would be an injection. But something which is not directly stimulating the economy, it would be a leakage. So savings don't directly stimulate the economy. It's the investment that arises out of it that is stimulating the economy. Taxes are not directly stimulating the economy. It's the spending that is arising out of it by the government expenditure, that stimulates the economy. And in the same way, when you have trade, right, with foreign countries, so if the country is households are spending on imports, okay, so the money is actually going to those other countries. Just like in these two cases, the money is going to the banks and the money is going to the government. In the same way, the money is going to other countries, and it's when they actually export goods to us that there will be an injection into the into the circular flow of the economy. Okay, so this is a leakage when you spend on imports. And rather than spending on exports, actually the right word would be an export revenue, because that's what the economy would kind of gain from exports, right? When they export goods, you get money in the form of export revenues. So import spending is a leakage, and export revenue is an injection into the economy. So that's all about the injections and leakages. Make sure you know the proper definitions, like I stress, and then you should be able to answer these questions once you know this model and answer the worksheet as well.